do music-wise? Did you start composing
Well,
then for scoring?
yeah, I actually got a lot more serious after college than I was in college. Uh, I'm sure you probably experienced this yourself with something. If you if you're expected to do a certain to achieve a certain level, then you typically will just like achieve that level.
Mm.
And as they raise the bar, you might keep up with the bar, but that's about it. But without there being a bar, without anybody pushing me forward or anything else, I had to push myself. And I love reading and I love learning. So I think I actually learned not to say anything bad about university. There's
Mm.
still plenty for me to learn, but I got really into it after university when I was on my own and I had to do it myself. And I think arguably I got a lot better. And so now I'm trying to build up more of an online presence. I'm meeting people and networking and taking it seriously. I've got a little portfolio of music, and I got some professional equipment since the flood to help me out. And I'm actually much more kind of eager than I was when I was just, in college, just showing up and doing the assignments.
Understandable. So how long has it been after you left college up until now?
The flood was in August of 2016,
Oh.
and I was supposed to go back for my second to last semester then. And I say it took about a year for me to even get back in my house. So it's been 2 years. One of those years, like I say, I was more or less homeless, or for most of the year, I was more or less homeless. And then it's been a year since then, because like I say, at the time she was a 1-year-old. Now my daughter's 2. So it's been about 2 years since I've been to university.
So how did you get involved with scoring?
That was something. Well, I mean, it kind of mixes two things I've always been interested in, which was I've kind of wanted to be a filmmaker for a long time, but my path in life just kind of never led me that way. I made short films with my friends, and my dad's a photographer, so I've got cameras around. I know a lot about cameras, and I took some film classes in college, so it's always been kind of in my peripheral, and so it was kind of an obvious marriage once I started doing composition to start trying to work in that medium. But it's hard to find. It can be hard to find a match, to find somebody who's trying to make a film and somebody who likes you and your music is a good fit for. It's even harder to find somebody who likes you and can pay you as well. I've noticed, but you got to start somewhere.
Understandable. So I saw on your YouTube page you had scored a scene for a horror movie. Was that your first one?
Yeah, I think that was the first thing my first serious thing I set to music. I did some of my own projects, which are not on my YouTube page. I've set to music before, but Framelines TV they release all of this unedited footage that they filmed, and it was just raw footage. It was 2 or 3 different camera angles of 2 or 3 different scenes, and they just released it on there. And they said, if anybody wants to do anything with this at all, they want to cut it up, they want to distribute it, they want to score it, edit over it, whatever they want to do, they're allowed to, so long as you credit them. So, which is very nice of them. And I encourage anybody who's interested to go check that out.
Yeah.
So anyway, I found it and I said, well, it's good practice for me to edit and color grade and score. So I did everything post-production on that little film there.
Oh my
so
goodness.
That was a lot of fun.
Wow. What was it called? Or does it have a name?
It's called Night Terror, which is, I mean, it's a very generic, like, it's a 2-minute scene of somebody who gets chased by a slasher, and then she winds up waking up right as she's about to get killed, and then she talks to her friend, and that's the end of it. So it's a very generic thing, so I gave it a very generic name, but I'm very appreciative that they were able to put it up there for free. It was nice of them to do that.
Yeah, that was a nice little snippet there, and your music fit really good for that.
Thank you. That was I was using Sibelius for that with the native, or not with the native sounds, with the small VST that I bought.
What is a Sibelius?
Sibelius is a notation software. So when I was saying earlier that I got a notation software to just literally write music down with, I got Finale, and since then I moved on to Sibelius. If you have any people, I'm sure some of your listeners would be familiar with either of those, but they're a notation software, and it comes with some native sounds. And then I bought a small upgrade to make them sound a little bit better, but you can tell that it still has that kind of artificial sound. So when I got hired on for the park, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit.
What's that movie?
Exactly. When I got hired on for that, I said, well, if I'm gonna do a serious project, I should get some serious sounds. And so I went out and bought a subscription to a professional Hollywood recorded library of sounds. So thanks very much for the compliment for that. But the sound set itself is the vast difference in quality, I think, between that and what you can get now.
Oh yeah, definitely. So Night Terror, did you do something in between?
No, I did a couple sketches for Nathan Suela, and because he's got a short film he's working on. I did a couple sketches for that, and I kept composing on my own. But no, it went straight from Night Terror to the park.
So how did you get involved with the park?
I was watching a Q&A by Filmmaker IQ. It's a pretty big filmmaking channel on YouTube. And they do history of film and history of cinema and all kind of cool videos like that. But anyway, they did a Q&A, and I think this is actually the first one I'd ever seen of them too. So it was kind of serendipitous. But while I was watching this Q&A, and they were asking for questions, so I asked some question about film. I don't remember what it was. About music and film, and I don't remember what the question was. But Nathan, I get a chat back in chat from this guy named Nate's Film Studios. And he said, hey, if you're a composer, I'm actually looking for one. Here's my email address. So I sent Nate an email, and he sent me back his score, and I wrote some sketches up. And then a couple weeks later, he said, hey, I've got another project I'm working on with this guy named Alex. He's looking for a composer, too. So that led me to you. Mm-hmm. So it was very serendipitous to find, in a YouTube chat, on a very small Q&A. It was very kind of strange that it happened like that, but I'm grateful it did.
Me too. Well, he had found someone else too, and they actually wrote a score. I don't know if you know this, and I'm I didn't even ask them to write a score. About the same time he contacted you, but I was more in contact with you, and then you came up with some ideas. It was a nice surprise.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting piano for the beginning. I always had this kind of, heavenly, ethereal sound. But then you came up with the piano, wait a second. It does work. I mean, this may all be vague to the listening audience, but you will see the movie eventually, people.
Mm-hmm. I always do a sketch, or almost always do my sketch on piano. It's a huge range. It's got huge flexibility. It's just a great instrument. And I of course, I play piano to write on. It's just a really great instrument to write on. So when I wrote the melody, I immediately thought of what else I could put it on, but then it just kind of fit so well. Mm-hmm. When I actually synced it up to the film, or the edit of the film that I had at the time, it just really seemed to fit with the kind of slow stride in the left hand, the way it kind of plonks, as she's kind of slowly walking through the park, and the kind of meandering melody in the right hand. I was this just kind of fits so well. I'm just going to send this to him and see what he thinks. And yeah, I thought it fit really well too. I'm glad you liked it.
Not to backpedal, but I actually was trying to think of scoring it myself, and I was playing around in GarageBand with stuff, and it just wasn't happening. I need someone who knows what they're doing here. So what was it like scoring the park? The whole thing?
It was a very enjoyable process. I was definitely nervous for some of it. Being a first serious project. Mm-hmm. And I'll add to that real quick, not being able to be in contact with the people, physical contact with you, with Nathan, or with anybody else. That's just a challenge of the time period that we live in. I would wage that a lot of films are being made where people are very disparate, and working all across the globe. So that's probably a very common problem that people have, but it wasn't really a problem that I was expecting. So it was I appreciate you guys being in contact with email and with texting and calling, but there's something about it's definitely more challenging to not have the person right there next to you to actually be able to bounce off, ideas and to actually sit next to each other and screen the movie and say, well, how do you feel about this? Or what do you like about that? So that's definitely a challenge. But overall, It went really well. I think we communicated really nicely. The ideas, I had a couple of ideas, and I went with the ones that I think fit best. And for the most part, those were the ones that we went with. So that was good. Kind of felt organic in that respect. So I don't think there wasn't a whole lot of push and pull, which I liked. So, which I'm expecting there will be in other projects, but
yeah, everyone's different. You know, this is really my first movie. I mean, I said, I shot a little one back in 2000 or 1999 with some friends, but this was my first one, that something I wrote and something I wanted to do, and got a bunch of people together. You know, what you did and the 3 pieces of music you put in the movie were really good. So I can't really give much away, but I mean, they fit definitely for the things. It was a little, you know, like you said, it was a little trying to feel things out, but even though we weren't in the same proximity, we were definitely vibing off each other. You're kind of getting the idea of what I was looking for, especially when Sophie's trying to get out of the park. That's all I'll say.
That was I won't say too much either then, but it was definitely, that was probably the most challenging of the 3 pieces, because
definitely, I believe it.
You're trying to foreshadow, but you don't want to give anything away. You know, you're trying to be dramatic, but you don't want to be heavy-handed. You know, it was just kind of a fine line, and I don't even know if I made that fine line or not. That's up to the audience to decide, but I'm happy with what we came out with.
Oh yeah, I mean, so far so good. I actually screened a bit of it for my wife and granddaughter, and they loved it. So I'm like, ooh, good.
Oh, nice. Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Oh, since you brought up your family, I'll just take the time to plug my wife and say that she was very supportive, very helpful. She's she's got a master's degree in English education, and she's an English teacher. So it was nice to have somebody who can analyze it and say, oh yeah, this fits because of X, Y, and Z plot reason, or this fits because, you know. So it was nice to have a little bit of expertise in the field, and let me tell you, she's honest. So there was a few things I had to go back and change, but it was nice to have her on my side. So
yeah, I definitely agree. She even offered. There's the lines in the movie. This doesn't give anything away, but when he said, "There's 3 sides to the story, mine, hers, and the truth," that was my wife's idea. She added those in there, like, yeah, because I need that thing where it's like that final thing that'll push Sophie to get away from him. Like, she's hurt enough.
Yeah, that certainly does it.
Thank you, my wifey, Anna.
There's kind of a history of that. I don't know if you're familiar, but George Lucas's wife did a lot of the editing on the original Star Wars.
Really?
And a lot of people give her credit for why the movie is as good as it is. So she had a big hand to play, and she's often kind of understated in the whole process. But there's a little bit of a history of wives helping out with films, and for the better.
Well, I did not know that. The force is strong in her.
Yeah, very.
Great. What's coming up for you in the future?
Nathan is still, I want to say he's still in the writing process. I think he's going back and redoing it. I think he was unhappy with it. Well, I think the actual story, without saying too much, is that he ran into a couple of snags in the production process. And so since he's kind of in a production halt, he decided to go back and rewrite it. Rewrite some of it anyway. So I'm kind of waiting on that to be finalized. He also recommended, he is like my agent apparently, he's also recommended another young lady who is doing a web series, which I don't actually know anything about. But he recommended I talk to her, and I've sent her an email, and I'm kind of waiting on her to get back to me. But according to Nathan, that's looking good. So I don't know anything about the project itself, but I've got 2 in the pipes with that. And I've been contacted a couple of times on other online, like on Reddit and on YouTube, by people who want to use my music in their independent films for like college or something. And so I just give those away so that they can use. I don't score it personally for them, but if they want to use a piece of music that I've already written and just put my name at the end of it, that's totally fine for me too. So I've got a couple things floating around the internet, but I'm really looking forward to doing that project with Nathan right now.
But you do have is the music education helping put the food on the table and all that?
A little bit. I'm actually, I stay at home with my daughter. I make a little bit of money doing guitar lessons.
Okay.
I've got some students I do lessons for. I did full time at a music studio up until the flood, and that was fun. There was a bunch of like 6 to 12 year